Okay, so welcome to Bard to the Bone. We're going to have a cast talkback edition from the cast of King Lear in original pronunciation. And we have almost everybody here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the people list and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself with your name, pronouns if you feel if you're feeling it, and your character name in original pronunciation, if you remember how to do that, because it's been a couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure you all can. My name is Sean Eustace. He, him, sometimes they, and I am the host and board member for Baltimore Shakespeare Factory. And the next person I'm going to go down the list here of people who joined and when. Greta.
Hi, my name is Greta, she, her, and I played Gloucester.
Okay. Jamie.
Hi, my name's Jamie, he, him, and I was the musical director.
Marnie.
Hi, I'm Marnie Kenrick, and I played Oswald and Burgundy.
And Abigail.
Hi, I'm Abigail. They, them. Sorry for my facial journey. I'm currently having a stare down with the spider, which is really fun. I played Cordelia and the foal.
Okay, next is Colin.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yep, Colin Riley, pronouns are he, him, and I played the Duke of Albany and Curran.
Okay, let's go with Marshall.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marshall B. Garrett. I am the director of the show, and I played with all of these people.
Nina.
Hi, I'm Nina. My pronouns are she, her, Aya, and I played Reagan.
I see Perry.
Hi, my name is Perry, any pronouns, and I was the stage manager.
Rocky.
Hi, I'm Rocky Nunzio, pronouns he, him, and I played Edmund the Bass.
And Zach, last and definitely not least.
Hi, Zach Brewster, guys, he, him, and I played the Duke of Cornwall.
Awesome, and we have two more people to admit, so I'm going to let Tom and Carrie bring in. Hi, Tom, thank you for joining us. And we are just now getting through our list. If you want, introduce yourself by your name, pronouns if you're feeling it, and the name of your character in original pronunciation if you can still remember how to do that after 2 weeks. I'll wait till you're unmuted if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Tom.
Hey there. Thomas Brown, the Isle of Kent.
And okay, Carrie's still joining in. And so now that we've gone through some of that, I'm going to go ahead and just raise your hands for anybody this is your first time doing original pronunciation. Just raise your hands. Oh, that's wicked awesome. Anybody this is your first time doing Shakespeare. Awesome. And let's see, we don't have very many audience members yet, so I'm gonna skip over is this your first time seeing Baltimore Shakespeare Factory and or OP? And you can just raise your hands or come on in with any thoughts about this. Any notable original pronunciation language discoveries for your character? If anybody has any initial thoughts, like any words that came out or gave you an insight to what you were presenting.
Well, everybody thinks I'm going to share one that is my personal favorite, and it lives kind of in between the heavy emphasis on scansion and the OP. which is what Rocky already did, the emphasis on the back half of the names of Edgar and Edmund. And the two of them kind of can blend. I mean, I know I called them by the wrong name constantly in rehearsal, but especially coming from Edmund, he was insistent on emphasizing the back half of those names, and I thought that was a delightful discovery that Rocky made.
Let's see. Anybody have anything else that stood out during your experience? I know it's been a while.
I enjoyed watching Abigail try and rhyme apish.
Well, I did. I put those together. And I had them be an end rhyme. I was trying to force that to work. And then at some point, I think during Tech Week, Tom Brown caught me behind stage and was like, this isn't really like a word. This isn't really how it should be pronounced in OP. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I just sort of leaned into this, like, because the idea of the fool is, I'm making up these things on the fly. I'm trying to make Lear feel better. And, not every joke is going to land. Not every rhyme is going to be perfect. So I'd get to the end of the line and be like, I don't have a good word. Apish? No, that doesn't work. Which was always fun for the audience. When I would, give it to them and be like, that doesn't work, does it? And I'd have a couple people go, nah. And I was like,
I actually remember that moment, and because most of the time with some original pronunciation and scansion rhymes, you're finding, in this it actually does rhyme, but like Louvre and Proof, and right. But in this one you very much went, didn't really go, and you're like, you know what? Let's make this happen, and so let's actually like put the spotlight on things not rhyming, and I love that you leaned into that. It's awesome. And let's see. While I've got you on this, I was going to go ahead and bring up that you managed to do both roles of Cordelia and the Fool, which is a historic choice, actually. And not many people do it. I think the most recent one, I actually looked it up to make sure I knew the names, was when the 2019 Glenda Jackson Lear and Ruth Wilson actually managed to play Cordelia and the Fool, as opposed to having the Fool be an older man who's the same age as Lear. And we actually had a younger Fool and combined with Cordelia, and there's a whole lot to unpack there. We could probably spend like 2 hours on that just alone. But any quick thoughts you want to bring to that?
Well, I think one of the really great things about playing both of those roles is that there's the through line throughout the whole play of both characters really taking care of Lear and being very heart focused. Marshall led a lot of really wonderful activities and exercises with us, focusing on whether our characters were, head, heart, gut, groin focused, and both Cordelia and the Fool really ended up being heart focused, because Cordelia loves her father so much. She goes through so much for her father. And, when she's gone, there's this sort of like kind of throwaway line that Nina as the knight had about how since me young lady's gone into France, the Fool has much pined away. So there's already this connection between them of being very close. And then, the Fool is left to try to take care of Lear as he hits his darkest moments and he hits rock bottom. Who's there? The Fool. The Fool does not leave until the Fool is forced away. So it's all very nurturing and very loving. So having that through line was really awesome for me to explore these different ways that these people take care of King Lear and the different ways that they express their love and express their nurturing comfort for him, because it's two very different tactics for these characters, but it comes out of the same place. So that was really fun for me as an actor to explore those extremes.
Yeah, I think the other two caregivers are really Kent really comes to mind, and Gloucester in his own way as well, because they're both also trying as hard as they can to take care of Lear. And there's later on when you have Edgar taking care of Gloucester, and it's a wonderful little thing of like, how do we care for our elderly? There's a really nice little plot through line that some people kind of ignore, but this really showed up in this one. Speaking of characters with multiple roles, I know Marnie had an experience with the multiple roles. If you want to expound upon that, if anybody else wants to chime in, go ahead.
Oh, I did many roles. I died many times. It's funny because I actually didn't realize till near the end that I actually die 3 times, and once is just not on stage. So twice on stage and once off stage. So that's got to be some kind of record.
I think you're entirely too hopeful about whether or not your gentleman also lived through the end of the play.
Fair enough. I mean, we can, Guinness Book of World Records it. I'm good. Tally it up to 4. But yeah, it's fun having to really establish differences, like having them be different enough when you're playing a bunch of different characters so that you don't just kind of fade into one another and, have on a different hat. So that was fun exploring.
Yeah,
and
you're not just reversing your jacket and coming back on stage. It's
right. And it allowed me to really lean into, for example, Oswald's smarminess, for lack of a better word.
No, I think that's the right word. Yeah. Oswald's a real opportunist.
Yeah.
Things.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to lean into multiple roles? There's not a whole lot more people. I think Jeff would be a great one. If you have a better word, just go ahead and shout it out. Let's see, multiple roles. Jeff is not here, unfortunately, and he got to do the job of being Edgar, who turns into poor Tom, and also has to be like another person who witnessed Gloucester's fall from the cliff and just changing himself and chameleon like, almost like a changeling.
Greta had some really wonderful things to say about that scene and Jeff's performance in it in particular. Greta, I wonder if you want to chime in since Jeff isn't here. Just about, I think you counted up, it was maybe 5 roles that Jeff ended up playing in that one scene.
Yeah, I remember the number 7, but I'm not completely sure. But yeah, it was such a monster thing when we first started working on it. It just, like, when we'd get backstage at the end of it, we'd just be like, oh my God. But it, eventually we got used to it, and it was, it became more natural for both of us. But at first, just trying to get all of that. And but he's like different people to me all through it. The person who takes me to the cliff, the person at the bottom of the cliff. After I pray, he becomes someone else. When he defends me from Marnie, he becomes someone else. And it may even be like another person when he leads me away from the battle. So yeah, I think Marshall was right that it's 5, and just all those changes. For me, my second role was being the herald. And it was interesting because when I came down to take care of Nina's body, I heard I would always be there working on her, being her mortician, while my death was being described. And at the end, when I would come back out to help her up and to uncover her and everything, at first I thought, well, this is kind of weird, because I would get back in my Gloucester costume because I wanted to take my bow as Gloucester. But then I thought, yeah, we're both dead. What the hell? We're both dead. It makes sense.
Let's see. Speaking of the whole, I brought up the word changeling when I was talking about for Edgar. I have to really separate Edmund and Edgar, and because they're definitely 2 different people. But you're like, wait, which one is which name? Because they're completely diametrically different people, really. And I was going to touch on, I guess, the magic that's in the show. And unfortunately, we don't have David or Aaron here with us. But there's the when Lear is making his curse against Regan? Goneril, thank you. Okay. His curse against Goneril, and he is like stomping on the stage and clapping, and it's like you're yes feeling this, okay, what is he calling down? Is he actually calling down an actual curse? And then later you have the storm starts very soon after that. And then it quiets down at a very particular moment when the fool does their prophecy. And I'm like, I kind of loved watching this throughput of like curses and prophecy and magic happening in this old Celtic Britain scenario. And does anybody want to touch on that or how that was developed or?
Well, one of the things that I very specifically remember when we were building up to the curse, actually, not about me, but we were talking about this idea of, the rhythm of the stomping and the clapping coupled with the circling of Goneril being Widdershins or counterclockwise, which Marshall straight up said came from directing Mackers and directing the witches and everything. But I think it's extremely appropriate that it came from the Scottish play and Marshall's experience directing the Scottish play, because, even though the way that, we set our version of Lear with a very, traditional Tudor costumes and very Renaissance images, the Fool says, I live before Merlin's time. So we're dealing with this very sort of Bronze Age Britain, pre-Roman, this pagan time of magic in the very air all around us always. There is no Christian God yet. He hasn't been exported over. So we're dealing with, the nature spirits and, the gods of the Celtic tribes, the Welsh mythologies and the Irish mythologies, the old Scottish ballads. So this is definitely a setting that has inherent magic in everything that happens. So having these moments when Lear calls on the gods and when the Fool gives the prophecy and when the curse happens is being just not necessarily par for the course, but so natural because it was so prevalent in this time period that we're working with. I think that was something that, for me at least, was very interesting, is having that inherent magical energy that flowed through that anyone could call on. It wasn't just the king that could call on the gods. The Fool has a prophecy foretelling the downfall of Britain. Like, that was a huge moment to give to a character further down on the totem pole. Yeah.
Even though the Fool is really the one that can actually tell the emperor you're wearing no clothes. So.
Yes, and that was always very fun to work with when I could look him in the eye and be like, why did you do this? So being able to look at a god and say, what have you done? And knowing that the god isn't going to smite me, because that's not how pre-Christian gods work. That's not how, they look at the world and function.
Yeah, they don't really smite.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you're approaching the play, it's Lear can be utterly godless, or it can have these kind of pre-Christian gods. And for me, at least, making the decision about which world the play was in actually was made for me by Rocky because of how he played the "Thou Nature Art My Goddess," which can either be a manipulative take or it can be calling down the goddess of nature. And I think it was some fluke because the rehearsal schedule changed so much as we were leading into it. And I think I ended up doing that speech with Rocky and the curse with David within a day of each other. And so my ear just caught the summoning of nature both times. And so it was like, oh, okay, we're in this space. We're going to bring down nature. We're going to bring her down again. And then it no longer is even clear, like, is this storm something that Lear has created, or is this storm something being created for Lear, or is it just a coincidence. I was about to curse, but then I realized we're recording and distributing this, so I won't do that.
I can edit in post. No, that's actually, thank you for that, because I was I mean, if you're open to it, you can see it. Rocky, did you want to add anything to that idea of any of the magic that or any of that old Britain magic that maybe your character was experiencing or brought to the fore?
Well, so it's interesting because I never saw nature as the god or goddess of nature. I saw it as a grander idea than gods. Because I see that speech as him specifically rejecting gods. The now gods stand up for bastards versus thou nature art my goddess. In that he was going to observe this force in place of a deity. Now, that being said, I also don't think, like, I wouldn't say his worship of nature would be atheistic. I do think he genuinely feels that he's communicating with it, and it is something that can aid him. But I think what he likes about nature so much is that it's unbiased. Whereas gods, they have agendas, they have rules, they are what creates society, whereas nature is the pure playing field. Now, part of that is he feels that in a pure playing field, he ends up on top. Um, and it is rather funny because as much as he talks about nature, he's very good at working society. One could argue that, oddly enough, it's not so much his devoutness to nature that allows his rise as much as how good he is at manipulating the existing system. Though I do think part of the reason why he's so good at manipulating that system is because he has no respect for it. Which, you know, that again goes back into the nature thing. But yeah, it's funny because I think David's curse was the day before I did that speech. And I actually memorized and rehearsed what I wanted to do with that speech before I came in. And I just knew that I wanted Edmund to get down on his knees, take off his hat, and like really honestly beg to nature for this. And the reason why I think it after it because after that was I think David might have been the day before, because Marshall told me after that. I had no idea this was a thing. Oh, by the way, so you know, this is the spot that refers to nature, by the way. And I was like, oh, cool. So it's interesting that there seemed to be like this ongoing thought of that, a little independent of what I was doing, but further cemented that idea.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, on the topic of esoteric stuff, the astrology thing. I was reminded. It took me a while to figure this out, but I was reminded that Shakespeare is so deft at not coming down on either side of an idea. Gloucester is obviously believes in astrology and the signs of the eclipses and all that, and then Edmund pokes fun at it and says it's just a bunch of crap, right? But it took me a while to realize that all the things that Gloucester said he saw in the stars happened. That astrology was right about the kingdom's ending and the father's, against son and all that stuff. So, Shakespeare gave you a good look at one side, and then he gave you a good look at the other side. It's fascinating.
Yeah, he's kind of a wizard that way. So just to go through it a little bit, so we touching on some of the other magic or astrology or even numerology bits. We have not only that, we have like 3 sisters, we have 3 kings, we have there's a bunch of that going on. Anything that you want to relay about any these, like, there's groups that like are one section, but then they completely get separated. So any Nina, Abigail, you want to bring anything about how you worked as the sisters or anything from those? Nina, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it feels weird to impart without Aaron, but there were a couple of discussions that were had informally about obviously the two sisters, of Goneril and Regan. They get there are many ways to see them interchangeably in this work, and Cordelia stands out as being the more principled sister. What we saw, I mean, and it's really, at least from my point of view, the kind of easiest way to make this approach is, and the most honest way is to try and identify each sister's unique motivations and unique, and we talked about, there was a lot of conversations about kind of elder, middle, and younger sister dynamics and how that influences the choices they make. I don't want to speak on Aaron's behalf, but I think it's very, the ways in which we interact specifically with Lear at the top of the show can very much indicate what the dynamics are, what the status of each sister is. You know, Cordelia is obviously the favorite, and maybe, and Abigail can speak to this more, but the way they play Cordelia clearly feels more of a freedom and a leeway to follow her principles, and her and kind of the whims of her morality, whereas Goneril and Regan are definitely feel inclined to play the game, so to speak. But even in that, they do it in their own different ways, and you can see, you can observe how Aaron definitely has that older sibling mentality of ambition and sort of, I guess, a lawful approach to the world, and how there are rules to be followed, and when you play by those rules, you reap certain rewards. And then my approach to Regan was very much, we're gonna go on the character spectrum of like, sorry, there are like texts firing off on my Mac, and you tell everybody to shut up. But I definitely viewed Regan as kind of more chaotic and sort of thrust into this position where she kind of felt like she was going to continue to be forgotten. And now all of a sudden there's responsibilities that she did not foresee. And you know, so having that kind of, bringing it back to the rules of threes that you were talking about, Sean, I think it created a very poetic atmosphere in which the sisters could kind of show off their contrasting personalities, contrasting motivations, and their means to their ends, which is a driving force in the conflicts of the play, particularly like, let's say, acts 3 through 5, when factions start to splinter and Goneril and Regan are no longer on the same side.
Yeah, that's and thank you for also pointing out that whole the family dynamic where you usually have like a eldest, the youngest, and you got that middle child, and like, well, what are we gonna be doing with that one? And it's tough. So thank you for that perspective. Unless anybody has anything that they want to bring up, go ahead, Abigail.
I would say, because if we've got the lawful sibling, we've got the chaotic sibling, and to keep going with like the D&D terms, I very much see Cordelia as a sort of like a neutral factor. Not that you know, she doesn't have her own opinions and everything, but she's very much, the Cordelia that I created is very much her father's heir. So she learns literally at his knee. She's at his side always. She is his heir in all ways, and you know, and his favorite. But she doesn't really do anything herself until she's forced to. So she's got this sort of like neutral aspect to her until it gets pushed. And I remember one of the days we were rehearsing one of the Queen Cordelia scenes, like when she comes back out, you know, with her kick-ass boots and her, you know, I'm gonna hit somebody gloves, and Marshall said something to me about how I love this sort of rash powerhouse Cordelia that you've put together. And I said, well, who did she learn it from? Who has she learned everything from? Her father. So she's seen his passions and she's seen how he handles things, and that's one of the reasons why she stands up to him in the beginning, beyond just the I shouldn't have to do this, I shouldn't have to prove how much I love you, but Dad, I'm fine playing this who loves me more game when we're in private, but if you're going to start doing this in public at a full court gathering, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be repercussions. And I know that because I've seen how you do things. I've learned how to rule through you. So when she comes back as the Queen of France with her army and everything, she's very much her father's daughter. And like sort of like a true carbon copy of Lear at his height, at the height of his power, because she had nobody else to learn it from. And I think that that's very interesting to look at all the different ways that we are the sisters are extensions of our father, and how we learned from him and how we took the same lesson and went in completely different directions. And I'm an only child, so this whole having sisters thing was like wild for me. I had no idea how to deal with it, but I really enjoyed the rapport that we came up with, backstage with some of our, private conversations and some of our, really fun sort of like joking around, well, my favorite brother-in-law is your husband, not your husband because of these reasons. And like, so, the cast building and the cast connection certainly helped create the sense of family in a really meaningful and genuine way.
That's awesome. I'm going to pivot a little bit because there's something that happens in every single BSF production, and that is pre-show and intermission music. And that's going to bring a whole bunch of you that probably haven't spoken yet into this, where one of the fun things as an audience is to go, what are they going to do? And Jamie, as music director, do you want to lead this off and maybe start with what you brought in, or how you decide what's gonna become the next song that we hear, or how it relates to the play or the experience?
Well, what I generally try and do, my whole thing is I want to bring in as diverse a crowd as possible, people that, younger people in particular. I want music that is going to be generally from, I try and get anything pre-1950, 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2020s. I want to try and engage people to realize that Shakespeare is just not coming from a museum. In Shakespeare's time, they would have had popular music, they would have had sing-alongs, it was bawdy and it was fun. So when I look at the music, I want that to come across. And one of the ways to do that is getting the actors to help come up with the songs. So I'll get the list, but most of the songs are actually picked by the actors. And we go from there. And it's a joy for me.
I loved hearing the audience reacting to the appropriateness of the song picks. Doctor, my eyes came on. People started to chuckle.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Or we would get groans, very deep groans.
Very deep groans.
Yeah, I was thinking like Doctor, my eye would. I tended to hear. I mean, there was one performance where there were like 3 people who thought that was the funniest thing in the world, but everyone just immediately got the sick humor of it. And I was talking with someone about this last week, that I hadn't thought about, because it's a very serious moment before that, and we come out, Jamie, Perry, and I came out very serious. I stayed in character as Edmund as I came out. What I didn't put together is apparently a chunk of people, until the music started, legitimately kind of forgot that Perry and Jamie were part of the band, and we're just like, where the hell is this going? I don't remember this Edmund scene.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and Jumper, seeing the kids react to Jumper, because everybody had heard that. And we did Ava Max, the newer song. And for me, the thrill was, yeah, or the fun is that I like taking hard rock. I go to the 70s crowd, and I've done Led Zeppelin, and this time doing Black Sabbath. And nobody even realized it except for like this small group, and all of a sudden I see this glow in people's eyes when all of a sudden it's like I'm doing a Johnny Cash version of Paranoid. So that's always fun for me also, just to see the reaction. But yeah, for all the different songs, Ava Max, when we did the Kings and Queens, we have such beautiful and amazing singers, carrying that off so slow. I had somebody come up just saying how beautiful and how angelic they sounded in the beginning of that. So I am so appreciative of the talent that we had also.
Yeah, you all rocked. Go ahead, Colin.
And not to toot my own horn, but Jamie picked 3 of my songs. I suggested Ava Max, I suggested Lady Gaga's Rain on Me, and I suggested Jumper, because 90s music. I really love, so I actually stage managed a production of Shakespeare's R&J by Joe Calarco, which is based on Romeo and Juliet. But and so our director also, she wanted to have pre-show music and intermission music, and she said, I want you all to pick the songs. And so I was like, oh wow. So being a lover of music myself, I got really into it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pick this song because it has this meaning and it's gonna totally tie into the play and people are gonna get it. And I don't think anybody came up to me and was like, oh yeah, those song choices were excellent. So when Jamie said like, hey guys, suggest songs for us to use, I was like, I'm on it. And I was like, okay, 60s, I got it covered. I suggested a song from there, 70s, 80s, 90s. I had songs from every single period. And I was like, Jumper for Gloucester was kind of an obvious pick. Rain on Me because of the storm. And then Ava Max, Kings and Queens, because it was about queens assuming the throne instead of kings, which I thought was like, that's a nice nod to Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. So that's kind of the reasoning why I picked those songs. And I was very happy when Jamie picked those songs. So.
And can I say that watching you during Rain on Me was a highlight of the show for me, because you just looked like you were having so much fun, Colin.
Oh, well, thank you. I was. I love those songs. I love singing them, and performing them was even better. So thank you very much.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of joy that comes from just watching people get to do like this extra little performance bit, even if it's only 2 or 3 minutes worth. It's and it's a good break. It's a nice mental break. Marshall, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, kind of the 3 quick thoughts. One is, we had a phenomenal, group of people from the jump, but Zach came and joined us a little bit late, and the day that we added, the mandolin and Zach's just energy on there was the day for me that all the music clicked in, and I've got to. Sorry, Zach, I'm gonna publicly say what you said to me privately, which was that Jamie, being the music director of the show, was a big part of why you agreed to do it last minute. So there is something about how Jamie approaches the work that's really magnificent and great for the actors, from what I understand. I don't know, I don't act. And then the other major thing that I wanted to say was just that Jamie and I went back and forth for a long time about the last song in the show, because BSF traditionally does kind of a jig moment at the end where, there's a big song, the whole cast comes out and sings, and the dead bodies get up and they can have their moment. And there's a version of that with like Romeo and Juliet or even Hamlet where, there's triumph in death. But this play doesn't have that, right? This play has no hope at the end of it. And as a very hopeful person in reality, I couldn't give myself anything to put my feet on, at the end of the play. And I didn't want the reaction that we got for Jumper and for Dr. My Eyes to be the reaction at the end of the play. You know, I liked those kind of let it loose moments in the middle. But by the time we got to the end of the play, I was like, we've just got to sit there and look at some dead bodies for a minute. And, you know, Annie's, even the song we ended up choosing, Dust in the Wind, I don't think would have worked if we sang it. It only worked because it was Jamie just plucking it on the guitar. You know the words in your head, so they're there. But we don't even get the hope of lyrics, right? There's nothing left. And then just the way that it ended up informing the curtain call and everything like that. And we just let Jamie play it out. We thought people would leave, and I don't think anybody ever left until Jamie stopped playing. So sometimes people just sat there for a really long time. But it gave them an opportunity to think about the play, and I think that was one of the more important contributions. And I think for us, a more unique contribution to the play from the music than what we normally get, which I really loved.
Somebody I know.
Some of us were dead for a really long time, so they can sit and think for a while. It's fine.
Somebody I know that came to it. It took a second to realize that the song was "Dust in the Wind," and then they said they got goosebumps. Yeah, it was really, really nice.
Yeah, I really like the way that actually wrapped things up without having this, you know, oh, and now we're going to celebrate. It's no, we're going to let you contemplate and meditate. Yeah. And we're going to put the violin solo in your head for the next 4 days. So thank you for that. Because that's an easy earworm for me. So shout out to all of you for that. Two other items that unless we have anything from our audience attendees that they want to ask, I'm going to go ahead and move on to a couple other things. This was a self-costumed show, meaning we did not actually have a costumer, and we did not. So I wasn't there for it. So tell me how that worked. How that one, I mean, I know the decision happened because of reasons, but how did you all like organize and decide what each person would wear and keep it there like a through line of consistency? Or
I can say something to that.
Okay.
I saw that Nina picked out an absolutely stunning red dress. So to make us match, I just looked for anything I could find that was red, and wound up with this cloak for Cornwall. But there was a lot of that, and honestly, there was a lot of okay, what have I worn with BSF in the past that I know fits me? Let me grab that.
I feel like I probably speak for a lot of people that for the first few weeks of hearing that, we were like, what do we even do? Eventually you just had to get in the room, but I was like, I don't know how to costume myself. What do you mean? Like, how do you pick out clothes, you know? And especially for like, I don't know how you felt about it, Greta, but like the difference between picking out a dress if you're playing a female role versus like looking for like tunics and button downs. And like, I'm a small person and there's not that many like really small men type clothes. And so that was like a bit of a challenge, but to Zach's point, Erin had, I think it started with Erin had picked out the black dress with the gold, and we had talked about the like goneril side being gold and black. And so that's, you know, when I found like Oswald's with the little trim, and I was like, yes. So the coordinating did help because it at least informed your direction as opposed to like, what do we do?
Yeah,
I want to just echo a lot of what Aspen said. For me, it was just Behar who helped me immensely. And I was on the same inspiration as Zach, where Erin brought in that dress, and I was like, okay, well, clearly I need to match this. And thank goodness we found a black cape, a white and black shirt, black pants that fit me, and boots and gloves and all of that stuff. And Marshall found my gloves. Tom brought in my gold chain. So it was a very collaborative costuming process, and like Marnie said, terrifying, because I'm like, how do I pick out clothes? What am I supposed to wear?
And Colin, where did that hat come from? Because your hat was incredible.
Tom, yeah.
Of
So
course,
of course. Tom accessorized me. Tom and Marshall accessorized me. Jazz got my clothes, and thankfully it matched my wife's outfit. So it was a win all around. And the servant, for me, it was actually like what fits me. And, thankfully I found things that fit me and I was like, okay, great. So when I got to the servant outfit, surprisingly, like it was easier. I was like, okay, I know what direction to head in and I'm just going to head in it. And, and I found stuff and it worked. So yeah.
I mean, not to diss any of the people who do costuming, because it's an important job. It's a hard job. And anybody else want to chime in with this?
I was going to say one more thing. It's kind of, I don't know if it's funny, but I think other people probably had this, that you don't realize how much your shoes inform like your like not only just like how you walk and your stance and how you feel, but also like for me, I had a pair of really cool tall boots with a chunky heel, which was like extra good because I'm short, and I felt like Oswald would do that because he wants to be a little bit taller and whatever. But then like for all my fighting, like both there was the trip, and then when I slide down the pole as the servant, they were like super rubbery and I would get stuck. So I had to, like a few weeks in, I had to change my boots because I just like, I couldn't slide with those boots. And luckily I found another tall pair that was cool, but yeah, you never know.
That's brilliant. And I agree. Your costume makes a difference. From shoes to even if you're wearing a mask. I've known people who say, oh, I put on the mask and finally I find my character. And I'm like, yep, okay. That's, so congratulations to all of you for managing that, finding things that fit and that coordinated, because it looked awesome. That was a real ensemble bit of work there. Last, and I got to mention it, pandemic challenges. Anything from, I'm guessing because it was a shortened rehearsal time, the need for being careful, for making sure you were tested, vaccinated, that you, I don't know if you had to isolate yourself more or you were more careful about going out. Any special challenges that you remember that got in the way, or even possibly things that helped?
This is kind of a weird one, and I don't know how everyone else feels, but sort of the opposite of this, which is I felt like probably, I mean, I'm sure the short rehearsal process didn't help, but I felt like we didn't know each other as well as a cast until our masks came off in tech. Like, I don't know, and I feel like, and that maybe speaks to like body language, like your face, like how your face informs like how you connect with a person. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like once we were in tech, and I know we were also spending more time together, but like once I could see people's faces, I feel like I got to know you better, and we just all kind of got closer. And before that, it was very like sort of separated, and just, there was literally fabric between us. So.
Not to mention distance.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting observation. Thank you for that. Anybody else have something similar or different? I'm seeing people unmuting themselves, so go ahead.
Well, also, we wanted to limit the amount of time people were together on the stage in a way. When I do music, I love throwing as many people onto the stage as possible. And for most of the songs, we limited it to about 3 people, which speaks to our artist here. But Marshall did let me have one song with Ava Max where I could throw almost everybody on the stage. So that was a big difference, because normally, like I say, just 3 people. But the thing about Shakespeare and the thing about our stage, the way we do it, is that we don't have limitations. We have challenges that to do something creative and different. The Black Sabbath originally was going to have drums and stuff like that, and it's like, instead I had 2 amazing singers that just took what was in my mind and it came out.
And Nina, I think you were unmuted at one point.
I was actually going to pass it off to Rocky first. We both kind of stopped.
Okay, go for it. Either way.
You call him Nina. Let Nina go first.
Okay, back to me. I think, Well, so definitely, I had actually forgotten this. The process went by so fast, but what Marnie said about kind of getting to know each other and facial expressions and acting styles, kind of coming into that process a little later. It's almost like there's an X factor that didn't get unveiled until later in the tech process. And I'd forgotten that struggle a bit, but I do think one of the pros actually of I don't want to phrase pros, but like one beneficial outcome of the pandemic and the mask policy was, I think it brought out a lot of like discretion and care within the cast. Like it encouraged a lot of checking in and making and seeing what people are comfortable with as far as choreography and blocking, which it just depends on cast dynamics, but some groups find it easier than others. And I know that, as we evolve in the theater world in regards to intimacy choreography and those spaces, we're trying to explore more and more how to be safe, keep people physically and emotionally healthy during runs. And so it's interesting how COVID naturally kind of brought that out, that process of checking in and really understanding where people's boundaries were, which I think really bring good things.
And Rocky?
Yeah, mine's just very technical. So I think everyone probably experiences this a bit, but I preface what I'm gonna say with so I have almost no sense of smell. I have trouble breathing through my nose at all times. And so when I am masked, I breathe particularly more through my mouth because I can't really breathe otherwise. And I realized when I took the mask off, I suddenly was aware of how many breaths naturally in the show I had done through my mouth, as well as how many scenes my body wanted my mouth to just remain open, and having to deal with, oh, I can't do that because otherwise I'm just like this the whole show. Which just I think just looks very comical just to have someone literally just open mouth the entire show. So during Tech Week, I had to get my nose working again, so that I wasn't just always having my jaw open.
Yeah, I'll say like the breathing and the speaking through the masks is difficult. Depending on what kind of mask you wear, because I showed up to rehearsal one night and I had one of my masks that was like double layered but like folded in, so I was trying to talk through like 8 layers of fabric and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't talk, and I was like, hang on a second, I just need to get just one of those cheaper disposable ones. But add on top of that, trying to learn OP with a mask on, was its own challenge on its own, because I'm trying to figure out how I need to shape my mouth to make these sounds, and I can't take my cues off of anybody else because everybody's covered. So, it was definitely this steep learning curve that, was, we took our masks off, and by that point I was like, I got it. So I don't know, sort of like trial by fire. Learn OP in 30 days or less. Boom, here we go. We did it.
I remember one of the first few times we did our warm-ups. And so we hadn't memorized quite like all 12 of the different sounds and the sentences. And we all had our masks on still at that time. And I remember like one of the times, maybe it was like, he seemed deceived. It was that one, I think. And I think maybe Jess had said it or Aaron said it. And like, I could see like 5 of us were all like, what were those words? Like no one had any idea. And I think it was probably me because I have a big mouth. I was like, can you just say that like slowly or in normal voice? Because we have no idea. We were all like, and it was just not even helpful. So like the mask certainly.
I think it was who's no blushers de vieux on Thursday. And if anyone out there in the audience understood me, good on you, mate.
I have a question for the actors on the OP that doing this. I never thought about this, but visually, when you're learning something like even a language or something, somebody's going to show you how their mouth is, ooh, ah, e, o. So when you're talking to each other and learning together, was that a big handicap?
Well, that's
Marshall
one of the
was
reasons.
brilliant enough to have us learn OP on Zoom, which was really helpful because we could see our mouths.
Yeah, I know that you did some OP training was done in Zoom, so she could get a close up of your face. And I mean, also it's so hard. I remember spending like 2 full weeks just trying to make a pure O once, and just like do this with your mouth, and it's if you can't see the other person's mouth, it's like how are you going to know if they're doing it right? So I mean, double challenged having to do that without having your face seen and having the freedom to actually get your face out there and moving as much as it usually could. So good on you for all of that. And so thank you so much for all of that, for all of your work. And any final thoughts and next projects?
Can I just give Perry a quick shout out because
That's what I was
Yes, absolutely.
Stage
Perry was
manager
amazing.
is like the hardest job anyway, and Perry was
Yes.
like following lines and cueing lightning and doing like scene set changes, and they're just unbelievable.
And playing music and being on stage.
Right.
Well, and giving the cues during the storm, so having the baby monitor right to their ear to make sure, since no one running the storm had any idea when their cues were, so that way they could know.
And being there
the
early
first
and
show-
leaving late.
I remember the first show that I did at BSF, somebody saying to me, oh, once the show opens, the stage manager doesn't have too much to do because we don't have lights and sound. So we just have them house manage. And I was like, what? And for this show, I think it was maybe second rehearsal, I pulled Perry aside and I said, as we were walking out to our cars, I was like, just so you know, they might ask you to house manage. I don't think you can do that for this show. And yeah, just everything you did, Perry. I mean, between the music, between coming on as a walk-on part, and obviously all the things that everybody else just said. I was tempted every time that I was at the theater during the storm to sneak backstage and just see what sort of madness you were managing back there, because I could not wrap my head around it. And I was like, nope, something gets to stay magic for me. And for me, that was Perry. Perry was the magic of theater for me.
Yeah.
Well, I just
Yeah,
want
thank
to
you.
say that a lot of you may not realize it, but every night she would walk barefoot, covering the entire stage, so that when David came out barefoot, his feet would be safe. And I just found that to be like so precious. And I watched that every night.
That's awesome. My very quick Perry anecdote that just speaking to their marvelousness. I remember during Tech Week when we were figuring out the storm, everybody knows and now everybody's aware, if the audience thought it was loud, it was louder for us. When you're backstage, you can't hear a thing, which is why that baby monitor was pressed to Perry's ear. But I will not forget how flabbergasted I was when we first did the storm, and the following morning, Perry sent out line notes, and I could not imagine how Perry could have even heard what was going on. But that just speaks to, they were on it, just every possible. I don't know how they did their job. It was great.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I really wish I could have seen the show from the front. But I definitely think I had an interesting experience with it, or a unique experience with it in some ways, because I mean, first of all, circling back slightly to the like COVID and masks and OP question, the last time I saw the show, well, I haven't seen the show. I didn't see the show from beginning to end a single time from the front, unfortunately. But the last time I saw the show from the front, everybody was still wearing masks because it was before Tech Week. And you guys still gave me goosebumps. So I'm sure that if I had been watching it from like a traditional booth, you guys would have just like ruined me every night. But it's a really interesting experience to not only hear the play every night, but to read the play every night, because I was on book in my script for probably 80% of the show, and just like living inside of the language like that, animated so beautifully by all of you, was just like such a privilege. So yeah, it was just an experience that taught me so much, and something that I'm really, really grateful for.
Awesome. And I know, as actors, as theater people, we're always thinking, oh, thank God we've got a stage manager and we appreciate them so much. It really also is great to hear you all say it out loud. So everybody, thank you to your stage managers. They're indispensable. So, and if anybody has any projects they want to promote that you're doing next, if nobody has anything, it's okay. It's been a rough, long year, but raise your hand if you have one. Okay, I see 3, 4. Okay.
So, oh, sorry.
Go for it. Go for it, Colin.
Okay, awesome. So we have a hat trick because I am acting in, Rocky is the playwright of, and Perry is the stage manager of Variations on Holidays at put on by Rapid Lemon Productions, and it's going to be at Motor House. It's going to be 3 weekends in December. It's great. It is a 10-minute play festival. The theme is the holidays. So you've got some really funny plays in there. You've got some serious plays and even some absurd plays. So it's going to be amazing. We are so excited for it and really looking forward to it. And I'm working on a YouTube series. It's called Harry and Shiba, and it's directed and created by Ian McCall. I know, it's awesome. It's a Baltimore-based, Maryland-based web series. It's the misadventures of this guy named Harry and this woman that he encounters named Shiba, who it's fun, it's crazy, it's wacky, it's awesome. You can find it on YouTube, and I am in episode 6 and episode 11. So yeah, check it out.
Cool. Okay. Marnie?
Rocky is also, I speak for Rocky in this one because Rocky is apparently doing literally all the plays at the same time right now. I think he's cloned himself. We're doing Mr. Burns' Post-Electric play, which is not at all like holiday related, but is Simpsons related and is very awesome in Gaithersburg. So that goes up in January if anyone wants to check out some pretty cool post-apocalyptic kind of.
And that's the Gaithersburg Arts Barn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And Rocky, anything that we missed?
Actually, yes. I'm also acting in a show with Best Medicine Rep performing out of Lake Forest Mall, called On the Farce Day of Christmas, from Emmy Award winning writer. I believe this is the premiere of it. Emmy Award winning writer Ken Levine, who wrote a lot of episodes of Cheers, and that opens on November 26th and plays for 3 weekends.
Awesome. And Marshall, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, this is for the non-local folks. I am directing Pericles down in North Carolina in Fayetteville at the Sweet Tea Shakespeare company. I think they're just Sweet Tea Shakespeare. I don't think they have company or theater, but that's down in Fayetteville, and I'll be doing that next June in rep with a new version of Gatsby and Much Ado About Nothing, which I'm not directing either of those, but I'm very excited for them.
Awesome. And thank you for adding links to the chat so I can put those when this is put up on YouTube. So maybe you'll get some draw. That'll be awesome. And Abigail.
I would say for the local crowd, I am wearing multiple hats, box office managing and house managing for Chesapeake's Christmas Carol. So if you want to stop by and say hi to me in the booth, I'll be more than happy to see you and not stare at a screen for a little bit.
Hooray, CSC. Okay. Um,
I've
and
got
Tom.
stage wise, I'm going to continue to try to improve the stage because why not? But one thing I'm going to experiment with is, you know what an ear trumpet is? Back in
Yes.
the day, deaf people had a horn like that. I'm working on a way to conceal trumpet sort of bells where you can't see them, but lead tubes backstage so you could hear what's going on stage without electronics, which have been known to fail. I think that would be really fun.
Anything we can do to help with the acoustics, I'm sure people will be glad to hear about. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for showing. Thank you to our audience members for coming to see Lear. If you missed it, we're hoping to put it up online in some format. And we also hope to see you again in 2022 on stage, behind the stage, or in the seats somehow. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night, all.
I miss everybody.
Okay.